Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on new tales. Was your wife living a double life? Today's story will dive into just that. Enjoy. Sitting in New York's airport isn't the most pleasant way to spend an evening. Max Dodd was watching the boarding process, hoping for his flight home to Charlotte. Max, along with his two sisters, owned a small pharmaceutical company that their father had founded decades ago. Although their father's pills were valuable, they didn't offer much growth potential. With their parents gone, Max had spent the past few days in New York negotiating the sale of the company to a major pharmaceutical firm. The deal was closed today, and all that was left was for the lawyers to handle the paperwork. Max had hoped to make it home tonight, but it looked unlikely. The last flight to Charlotte was fully booked, and he was third on the waitlist. He hadn't called his wife, Camilla, because he didn't know what to tell her. Sitting at the bar, sipping his second gin and tonic, he thought about the deal and the money he and his sisters would share, over $10 million for him, plus a well-compensated transition period with Big Pharma. This would mean a new lifestyle for him and Camilla. Their twin daughters were already in college at Duke, and tuition was draining their finances. But all of this would change once the pharmaceutical deal was finalized. As the boarding process neared its end and the gate agents were ushering the last passengers onto the plane, a small miracle happened. The boarding sign changed, and Max's name appeared on the waitlist. He quickly paid his tab, waved to the bartender who gave him a thumbs up, grabbed his briefcase and duffel bag, and dashed for the gate. The agent handed him his boarding pass and explained that a group of 4 who had checked in remotely hadn't shown up, so they were given the seats. Max rushed down the jet bridge with his new fellow passengers and was delighted to find that he had a first-class seat. A good omen, he thought. He was on a flight, sitting in first class, and heading home a day early. Maybe the pharmaceutical deal was a sure thing. As the plane taxied to the runway, the flight attendant offered him a drink. Max decided on another gin and tonic, then dozed off, dreaming of a future with Camilla where they could always fly first class. The jolt of landing woke him up. Exhausted and a little tipsy, Max made his way to the taxi stand. He had driven his pickup truck to the airport a few days earlier, but now he was too tired to drive. It was late, too late to call Camilla for a ride. The cab ride was long enough for him to fall asleep again. When they arrived, the driver had to wake him up. Max paid the fare, added a generous tip, and sluggishly got out of the cab. It had been a long, busy day, and he was looking forward to relaxing with Camilla. But as the taxi pulled away and he turned toward the house, he was stunned to see a gold Mercedes parked in the driveway, in front of his side of the garage. The car looked very fashionable, though all Mercedes seemed stylish to him. The house was dark. It was past midnight. Max stood there for several minutes, trying to avoid the unthinkable. He had spoken to Camilla around noon, and she hadn't mentioned any late-night visitors. He hoped for a happy scenario where he could soon snuggle up to his warm, sleepy wife. But his mind wasn't cooperating, so he slowly walked to the door. He unlocked it and entered the passage between the garage and the house. The house was eerily quiet as Max moved slowly through the kitchen and up the stairs to his and Camilla's bedroom. The door was open, suggesting they weren't expecting visitors, so Max stepped inside and quietly closed it behind him. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. His mind went blank, his breathing halted, and his heart seemed to freeze. The sight before him was unimaginable. Camilla lay naked, sprawled on her side of the bed, her arm draped over another man who was also asleep, a faint smile on his face. Max stood there for what felt like an eternity before his mind started working again. He looked again at Camilla's hand resting on the man's body, and their synchronized snoring broke Max's heart. Until tonight, he had found comfort in Camilla's gentle snoring, a sign that she felt safe and secure in their shared life. Now, he realized he would never hear that soothing sound again or share a bed with her. Despite his heartache, Max's mind started to race. He noticed the man's clothes neatly folded on a chair Max himself had sat on countless times. Rage began to build inside him. He considered grabbing the tennis racket from the bedroom closet to confront the man but quickly dismissed the idea. He could also lash out at Camilla, but he knew that would only lead to bigger problems down the line. Instead, Max came up with another plan. He took out his cell phone and snapped some incriminating photos. After finishing, he gathered up the man's clothes and shoes. The man was significantly larger than Max, at least 4 or 5 inches taller and about 50 pounds heavier. A confrontation with a tennis racket seemed unwise. Max took one last look at Camilla, his beloved wife and the mother of his precious daughters, and steeled himself against the love that had driven him for over 20 years. Without shedding a tear, he left the bedroom and descended the stairs. Outside, he beat open the Mercedes doors, loaded his briefcase and duffel bag inside, and slid into the driver's seat. Though he wasn't a fan of luxury cars, he found himself appreciating the Mercedes as he figured out the controls and drove off. About a mile down the road, he pulled over to examine the man's wallet. Inside, he found the usual items, some cash and business cards identifying the man as Franklin Th. Thompson, a senior sales manager at a local Mercedes dealership, along with a driver's license showing a Charlotte address. Max thought about the trouble he could cause for Franklin, and possibly for Camilla too, but he was exhausted and decided to head to the nearest motel for some rest. Meanwhile, Camilla was reflecting on her affair. She knew she wasn't as sharp as Max, but her carefulness had kept the affair with Franklin Thompson hidden for almost 5 months. As she lay in bed with Franklin the next morning, she thought he was good in bed, though not as good as Max. Outside of the bedroom, Franklin couldn't hold a candle to her husband, too much like a typical car salesman, she thought. Camilla concluded that it was time to end the affair. Franklin had become too possessive, wanting to spend the night with her. Although she allowed it this last time, she decided it would be the final one. She planned to spend the rest of her life with Max, and having another man in their marital bed, even if Max never knew, was too disrespectful. She resolved to call Franklin later that day to end their affair gently but firmly. Then she headed for the shower, preparing to face the day. She was getting dressed when Franklin came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel. He paused for a moment and then asked, "Camilla, where did you put my clothes?" "What? I didn't move anything," Camilla replied, confused. "Where are all your clothes? What are you doing this evening?" Franklin asked, searching the room. "I folded them right here on this chair, but now they're gone." "Did you take them to the guest room?" he wondered aloud. Camilla, a bit impatient and thinking they might have had too much to drink the night before, suggested, "Maybe you left them downstairs when we came in last night." "No, I'm sure I didn't, but I'll go check," Franklin said, heading out of the bedroom. He soon returned, looking worried. "Camilla, my car's not here. My clothes aren't downstairs. Someone must have broken in and stolen my clothes and my car," Franklin exclaimed, panic rising in his voice. "What? How could this happen?" "We were here all night," Camilla said, trying to process the situation. Camilla suddenly collapsed onto the bed, overwhelmed. It was Franklin's turn to ask, What's wrong?" Camilla struggled to speak, her breath coming in short gasps. "Franklin, what if it was Max? What if he came back from New York while we were sleeping and took your stuff and your car?" Franklin sank onto the bed next to her. "We need to find out where Max is. If he's still in New York, then it's a break-in and we need to call the police. I have to get my stuff and my car back. But if we call the police, they'll want to know who owns the car, and it's in my wife's name for some tax reason." His voice trailed off as he imagined the worst-case scenarios. "I'll call his office. His secretary gets there very early, she might know where he is." Camilla took out her phone and dialed Max's office. Even though it was before 8 a.m., Sheila, Max's secretary, answered right away. "Max Trunk's office, how can I help you?" Sheila answered. "Hi Sheila, it's Camilla. I know it's early, but I'm trying to reach Max. He didn't call last night. Have you heard anything from him? It's still early, and I know the team in New York worked late yesterday, so they might be starting late today. I spoke with Max yesterday around 6 p.m. just before I went home. He said they were making good progress and might reach a deal today. That's good to know. So he's still in New York? Yes, I'm sure he is. I expect to hear from him as soon as they're back at the office. Do you want me to have him call you? Yes, please, but only if he has time. I know how important this deal is. Thanks, bye. After hanging up, Camilla turned to Franklin. Max is still in New York, so we should probably call 911 and report a break-in and car theft. Franklin looked frustrated. What are we going to tell them? That your lover had his clothes stolen from your bedroom and his car stolen from your driveway. This is a mess. Okay, I understand. Let's think this through. How about I take you home, you get dressed, and we report the thefts as if they happened there while your wife was taking the kids to school. Maybe we skip reporting the stolen clothes, it might be harder to explain than the car. Except I told my wife yesterday that I was going to Atlanta for a meeting about the new Mercedes S-Class and wouldn't be back until noon. All right, we can wait until around noon. You'll be back by then anyway. You drove home, left your keys in the car because it was just a quick stop before going to the dealership, and your car was stolen while you were home. You know, that might work. I could say I left my wallet in the car too, and that got stolen as well. We can hang out here for a few hours. Maybe we'll even end up needing another shower, together. Franklin agreed, yeah, I need to call work to take a sick day. Camilla worked out the details as they prepared to execute their plan. As a paralegal in a small office, the work was decent but a bit dull. Camilla stepped out into the hallway to make a call and returned to find Franklin back in bed. She was tempted but, recalling her recent decision to end the affair and thinking about Max, she decided to put a stop to it. Franklin, she said firmly, without making any move to undress, I think it's time to end this. We had a good run, but you know it could have been Max in that bed last night. We're lucky it wasn't, but let's find some clothes and maybe grab breakfast. Franklin considered trying to change her mind but ultimately realized she was right. They were lucky, and it was time to move on. All right, he said with a resigned smile, remembering that another attractive middle-aged woman frequently visited the car dealership. It was a good run. Let's get some clothes on. Finding clothes for Franklin proved challenging. He was about 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller than Max. Camilla managed to locate a pair of worn-out sweatpants that seemed to fit Franklin after making some adjustments. She also found a faded sweatshirt that had turned pink from a previous laundry mishap, trimmed the sleeves, and cut additional openings at the armholes to make it fit. Franklin ended up in a makeshift outfit that made her want to comment on how ridiculous he looked, but she just smiled slightly when she saw his appearance. They decided to watch TV until it was time to go to Franklin's house. Earlier that morning, around the time Franklin discovered his clothes and car were missing, Max pulled up to the address listed on Franklin's driver's license. The house was nice, with a bicycle leaning against the garage wall. Max sat in the car for a while, contemplating his next move. Despite a restless night at the motel, he didn't feel as bad as he expected. Perhaps he was still in shock. Max walked to the front door, holding Franklin's wallet with his driver's license, and rang the bell. A young woman in her 20s, attractive but a bit disheveled, answered. Max, wearing a suit he'd bought the day before in New York, a rumpled white shirt, and no tie, tried to look non-threatening. He held up Franklin's driver's license and pointed at the gold Mercedes parked outside. Before he could say more, the woman slammed the door in his face. She reopened it moments later, holding her cell phone. I have 911 on my phone and I'm ready to call if you don't tell me my husband is okay, she said. Ma'am, I have a photo on my phone of your husband and my wife in bed, naked and asleep. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with your husband or my wife. If you want to call 911, go ahead. I'll just wait in the car, Max replied. They stared at each other for a moment until her expression softened, and she opened the door wider, inviting him in. She turned to head back inside, saying, "Wait here, I'll be right back." Max heard her speaking to at least one child from the kitchen. When she returned, she handed Max a cup of coffee. "I hope you drink it black. I need to get the kids ready for school and drop them off. I'm afraid I trust you more than my husband right now, so you can stay here until I get back, and then we can talk." "All right," Max agreed, "we're in the same boat." He settled in the living room, sipping the less than stellar coffee, and considered calling his office but ended up just waiting. When Molly returned, she had combed her hair and applied a bit of lipstick. She extended her hand for a handshake and introduced herself. "Sorry for the earlier commotion. I'm Molly Thompson, currently married to Franklin Thompson, who's involved with the woman you saw." Currently married to Max, Camilla couldn't help but laugh at the turn of events. It felt good to laugh. "You're absolutely right about everything happening right now. My name is Max Tronder, and my wife's current name is Camilla Tronder," Max said, explaining what happened last night as he watched Molly's tears start to flow. "I'm divorcing Camilla, and I'm sure the photos will help me secure a fair settlement. I can send them to your phone if you think you might need them." "Yes, I think I should have them," Molly replied, her eyes empty. Max reached for his phone but stopped when she added, "Wait, don't send them to me. If I see them, I'll never get those images out of my head. Keep them for now, and if I need them, I'll contact you." "Of course," Max said, then added, "but I probably won't be at my current job for much longer, and I definitely won't be in my current house. I'll give you my lawyer's contact details. You can always reach out to him if you need any help with photography or in a divorce situation." "Okay, thank you," Molly said. "But what should we do right now? Are you returning the car? Are you waiting for Franklin and planning to confront him? He's a pretty big guy, even if he's put on a little weight. He was supposed to be in Atlanta for a car meeting and stay overnight, so he should be home this afternoon. You know, I kind of like this car and have never driven a Mercedes before. I think I'll keep it until someone makes me return it," Max said. Molly laughed and joined in, both needing a release. "Actually, the car is registered in my name for tax reasons. I think more depreciation, so Franklin, should I say, put it in my name since I drive it more than he does." She paused thoughtfully and continued, "Since I own the car, I can issue you a permit to drive it. If you get pulled over, the cops can call me to confirm." Max liked the idea but didn't respond immediately, sensing that Molly was still working out the details. "And one more thing," Molly said. "There have been a lot of break-ins in our area lately. You have Franklin's keys and clothes. If the spare key we hid in the backyard is missing when he gets here, he might try to break in. If our security system is set to instant alert mode, it will attract attention from the police." "Wow, Molly," Max said, "I think I'm falling in love again. You're amazing." "Okay, calm down. Franklin can just wait to come back until the kids and I get home from school this afternoon. I can pick them up and take them to the park for a while to give them more time to get into even more trouble. Whatever happens, please let me know, especially if he gets into trouble with the police. Call me when you need your car back. I don't want you to get into any trouble. We're done here, and you need to get out of here. So do I." Max drove off in the gold Mercedes, wondering how much a similar car in a different color would cost. Molly gave him the permission slip, and he assumed she would handle hiding the spare key, setting the alarm, and leaving for the day. Camilla and Franklin arrived at Franklin's house around noon. Camilla dropped him off and quickly left, trying to avoid any further issues. Franklin approached his front door, hoping it might be unlocked, but it was locked. He hurried around the backyard, only to find that the rock where they kept the spare key was gone. "Oh no," he muttered, looking at the back of his house. He wondered if he should break in. He tried the back door, but it was locked, so he decided to force his way inside. He looked at the windows along the back wall and chose the largest one in the family room, thinking breaking it would give him more space to enter. He broke a branch from a nearby tree and examined the window. Since he was barefoot, he needed a way to avoid the broken glass. He dragged 2 chairs from the back porch and placed them near the window, planning to climb over them to avoid the glass and be careful when entering the living room. Taking a few deep breaths, he was ready to proceed. Franklin threw the branch through the family room window, shattering it and setting his plan into motion. A sharp crack was followed immediately by the blaring sound of the home alarm system. To make matters worse, a police car happened to be driving by just as Molly had called the local police station that morning to report possible break-ins in their area. "Damn, damn, damn," Franklin muttered as he scrambled to climb over the chairs to get inside and disable the alarm system. But he was too slow. The police arrived right on cue, and as they approached, they ordered him to raise his hands. Franklin glanced back and saw 2 officers with their pistols drawn. He complied, clambering off the chairs and backing away, only cutting his legs slightly in the process. "Officers, I can explain," Franklin began, but one of the officers interrupted by putting him in handcuffs. The officer then read him his rights and asked if he wanted to say anything. Yes, this is my house, and I don't have a key, so I broke in to get some clothes and call my office," Franklin said, trying to explain. The officers looked at Franklin's tracksuit, clearly bemused by his appearance. One of them asked, "Do you have any ID?" No, not right now. I lost my car and all my clothes and stuff, and I just need to get inside to get some real clothes," Franklin explained. "How did you lose your car, sir?" the officer asked. "Well, I stayed at a friend's house last night, and this morning the car wasn't there. It just wasn't," Franklin said. "Have you reported it missing? Maybe you left it at a bar or somewhere?" the officer probed. Franklin was stuck. He didn't want to reveal where he had been or why he hadn't reported the car missing, but he also didn't want to go to jail for breaking into his own home. The handcuffs were really uncomfortable. Then he had an idea. "You can call my wife. She can identify me. Maybe you could take me to my office, and I can ask someone there to help me get some clothes." One of the officers took Molly's phone number and went to make the call. Franklin could hear parts of the conversation. "Ma'am, this is Officer Ryan from the Charlotte Police Department. We're at the address you provided, and we have a man here who claims to be your husband. He tried to break into the house because he lost his clothes." "Yes, ma'am." "No, ma'am." "Yes, ma'am. We'll take care of it." "Thank you, ma'am." The officer turned back to Franklin. "The lady says her husband is in Atlanta and that anyone breaking into her house must be a burglar. She hopes we throw you in jail and throw away the key." Franklin nearly broke down in tears as the officers led him to their patrol car and took him to the station. Meanwhile, Camilla arrived at her office half a day late but was determined to make up for lost time. Still preoccupied with thoughts of Max, she called his cell phone but got no answer. She then called his office again. "Hello, Sheila. It's Camilla again. I'm starting to get a little worried about Max. I still haven't heard anything from him." "No, I haven't heard anything new. I guess this means he's still in New York with the lawyers. But it's really not like him to be this out of touch. You do seem a bit concerned, so I'll check with them and either he or I will call you back soon." "Thank you, Sheila. You're the best." A few minutes later, Sheila called back. "Camilla, this is Sheila. I spoke with one of the secretaries at the law office. She said Max left late yesterday, hoping to catch the last flight to Charlotte. I called Max's cell, and he asked me to let you know he would call later." "All right, thank you, Sheila," Camilla said, feeling a knot form in her stomach. Max hung up after talking to Sheila and was now driving a gold Mercedes to see a divorce lawyer recommended by Fred Thomas, his longtime business attorney. He trusted Fred and hoped he could trust this new lawyer as well. "Mr. Thunder, please have a seat. Ms. Reinhardt will be with you shortly," the secretary said as Max entered the office. He sat down, somewhat reassured by the office's appearance, neither luxurious nor shabby, but just right. Max barely had time to think before a 50-year-old woman, somewhat plump with obviously dyed red hair, walked into the waiting room. "Mr. Thunder, I'm Anna Reinhardt," she said. Max stood up and nodded. "Fred called and asked me to take the best possible care of you. Let's go into my office and discuss your situation." Max followed her into a nice but modest office. He took a coffee from the secretary and began recounting his story. He mentioned discovering his wife's infidelity, wanting a divorce, and needing to protect his assets, particularly the proceeds from selling his company and his sister's company. He skipped over the part about the golden Mercedes, suspecting Anna might find it amusing. "Max, is it okay if I call you that?" Anna asked. He nodded in agreement, and she continued, "Well, here's some relatively good news, considering the situation. Fred informed me that you and your sisters owned the company before you married your wife. This means your shares are considered separate property. Your wife has no claim to the shares or the proceeds from the sale. However, you need to keep these funds separate from any joint accounts you may have with her." "That's good to know. What about our house, retirement accounts, and other assets?" Max asked. "Unfortunately, there's not as much good news there. Since your salary is significantly higher than hers, you will likely be required to pay child support for several years. We might be able to avoid contributing to the retirement accounts by increasing the amount of alimony. It's not ideal, but it's better than having to share your retirement savings decades from now. Also, with your kids in college, you won't have child support payments for them. You understand that you'll need to cover their remaining college expenses, right?" "Yes, that's acceptable. What about the house?" "You and your wife need to decide what you want to do with it. You can sell it and split the proceeds, or one of you can buy out the other's share based on the current appraisal value. After what I saw last night, I definitely don't want the house. I don't think Camilla can afford to buy my half, so selling seems to be the best option." "All right, I can handle the paperwork. The divorce petition is a standard form, so I can have it ready for you early tomorrow if you want. We can serve it to her tomorrow afternoon." "Wow, that's pretty fast," Max said. "Hi Mr. Thunder," Anna continued. "If there's a chance for you and your wife, perhaps some counseling or a little time might help?" No. Honestly, it's just a shock. Less than 24 hours ago, I was excited to get home and share the news about the sale of the company with my wife. Now I'm here talking about divorce. We need to move forward. I'll figure out how to handle this." "Okay, but if you change your mind, just give me a call, and we can work things out." Max thanked her, paid the advance, and left the office. He walked back to the gold Mercedes, still pondering the situation from the night before. He remembered he needed to call Camilla. Camilla answered the phone in her office at the law firm where she worked. "Camilla, it's Max. You called and wanted to talk." "Oh, Max, thank you for calling. I missed you. Where are you?" "I'm here in Charlotte." "When did you get back?" "I arrived last night." Camilla felt a pang of anxiety. "Max, I'm hanging up now." "No, please don't," Max urged. "Can we meet somewhere? Just for a few minutes." Max hesitated. This woman was his love, the mother of his daughters, and the most important person in his life for over 20 years. "Okay, Camilla. Let's meet at the Center Cafe at 6. Camilla felt a deeper pang. The Center Cafe was where she and Max had first met, a place that had become special to them over the years. She was worried about why Max suggested this meeting place, but she had to agree. "I'll see you there. And Max, I'm sorry." Max hung up, leaving Camilla alone with her tears and growing anxiety. She arrived at the cafe early, hoping to clear her mind before Max showed up. She ordered a glass of wine and sat there, reflecting on how she had become such a terrible person. Her first real intimate experiences were with strong football players in college. Though she had flirted in high school, it was those college athletes who had made her feel truly helpless. When Max arrived, she believed she had moved past the need to feel dominated. Max was everything she needed: strong, loving in bed, a great father to their girls, and a good provider. But the memories of her past indiscretions lingered. During a flight back to Charlotte from the West Coast, where Max had been visiting a pharmaceutical company, she sat next to a large man who turned out to be a local NFL coach. They drank too much, and she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. When she woke, his hand was between her legs. She regretted not pushing him away, feeling only relief that Max hadn't returned until later that week. She had felt guilty, especially after the coach introduced her to a practice squad player before leaving. This new affair was short-lived, but it stirred her guilt again. She had tried to remain faithful after that and ended the relationship. With their daughters off to college, she and Max had reconnected and cherished their time together. But when Max surprised her with a new car, she went to the Mercedes dealership and met Franklin Thompson. Despite knowing it was wrong, she ended up in bed with him. The guilt was overwhelming, and she knew letting Franklin stay overnight in their marital bed was a grave mistake. "Hello, Camilla," Max said as he approached, looking more haggard than she remembered. She felt the weight of her actions heavily. "Hi, Max. Thank you for being here. I don't even know how to begin apologizing," she said, her voice trembling. "Can I ask a few questions?" Max began, sitting down. "Max, please, don't," Camilla pleaded. "If we have any chance, answering questions might destroy it." "We need to confront this, Camilla," Max said firmly. "We should run away together, even just for a few days, to some Caribbean island where we can be together and sort this out." "Camilla, you're delusional," Max said, shaking his head. "If you can't answer my questions, I'll leave right now." Camilla's stomach churned, but she knew she needed to face the pain and let Max express his feelings. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way through this. "Okay, Max. Ask me anything." "What time did I get home last night?" Max asked, his tone sharp. Camilla hesitated, knowing this was the start of a painful conversation. Max's thoughts swirled as he tried to process the devastating scene he had witnessed. "Do you know what I saw when I got home? When I went upstairs to our bedroom, or should I say, what used to be our bedroom?" "Yes, Max, I know," Camilla replied, her voice filled with sorrow. "I know how awful it must have been, and I understand it's all my fault. I'm begging you, please listen to me. I'm so sorry, and I won't fight the divorce if that's what you want." "Shut up, Camilla. Next question, how many men have there been since we got married? And if you're lying, if I think you're lying, I'm getting up and leaving." Camilla's initial impulse was to lie, but then she realized that lying was too risky, and their marriage was probably already over. "3, Max. 3 men, whom I now regret ever meeting." Max could see in her eyes that their marriage was over, and he accepted that. "You deserve someone better than me. I'm willing to do almost anything to give us another chance, but I understand if you don't want anything to do with me anymore. Call the lawyer. Tomorrow, you'll be served with divorce papers." Max stood up and walked out, leaving Camilla sitting there, too stunned to even cry at first. As she reflected on what Max had just said, the emotional pain overwhelmed her, and she began to cry. Max walked away from the cafe, reminiscing about how he and Camilla had first met there decades ago and wondering if this would be their last intimate conversation. Bitterly, He thought that knowing about her nights with other men and seeing her with Franklin in their bed was the worst kind of intimacy. He wondered how he would ever get past this. Perhaps he could eventually handle the three faceless men from their 20 years together with counseling and some humiliation on her part. But he knew he would never get over the sight of her in their bed. Their marriage was over, and sitting in that damned gold Mercedes, he finally broke down in tears. As it started to get dark, Max wiped his face and thought about what Molly Thompson had said that morning, which now felt like it happened a year ago. She had advised him not to send her photos of her husband with Camilla, believing it would make forgiveness even harder. Max decided to call her, share his thoughts, and check on the situation with the Mercedes. "Hello, Molly." "Hi, Max. Thanks for calling. I'm hanging in there. You can keep the car for now. Franklin is in so much trouble that he won't need it for a while." "Trouble? I hope you didn't have to shoot him." "No, but he might wish I had. He got arrested for attempting to break into our house and apparently tried to attack a cop. You know, he's a big guy, so they used a stun gun on him. Then, while he was in jail, he might have been attacked by another inmate. I haven't talked to him much, but he had to call his brother to post bail, so now his whole family knows about the mess." "Wow, Molly. I can't say I feel sorry for him, but I do feel sorry for you. What I really want to say is that you made the right choice this morning not to look at those pictures. If there's any chance for reconciliation, those photos would make it much harder." "Yeah, he finally came home a couple of hours ago, crying and apologizing, begging me to let him stay. We have 2 little kids, so I'm going to try to work things out, but life won't be easy for him. His brother, who's a lawyer, advised me to push for a prenuptial agreement and offered to help. I'll also be in control of our finances for a while. Franklin will be on a short leash, and I plan to keep him in check. Keep it up, Molly. I wish you all the best. And when you need to return the car, just give me a call." They ended the call, and Max sat there, feeling a pang of jealousy towards Molly. Perhaps Franklin had learned his lesson. Getting arrested and charged with assault for trying to hit a police officer, along with his prison experience, might have scared him straight. Max hoped so, for the sake of Molly and their children. After leaving the police station, Max returned to the motel where he was staying. He had one more thing to do before trying to sleep: call his daughters, Jane and Joan. "Hi, Daddy," Jane answered. They were twins, not identical but close enough that they sounded alike. They were both studying nursing at an expensive college. Max had always admitted to himself, though not to others, that he was relieved they weren't identical twins. They were quite adept at ganging up on him, and he imagined it would be even harder if they were identical. Still, he enjoyed spoiling them. "Hey, Janie. I'd like to invite you and Joan to brunch tomorrow, around 11 a.m. at that place on 4th Street we used to go to." "Sure, that works for me," Jane replied. Max heard some noise and then Jane came back on the line. "Joan's fine too. Can we?" He quickly interrupted her, "Let's make it just the 3 of us. No friends this time, okay?" "Okay, Dad," Jane agreed. "Great. I need to run now. See you at 11. Love you both," he said, and before she could reply, he hung up. He hoped Jane wouldn't call Camilla. If she did, Camilla would have called Max immediately. As Max left the cafe, leaving Camilla with his warning to hire a lawyer, her tears were hard to stop. She knew she had messed everything up: her marriage, her family, her entire life. She was sure her daughters and parents would find out, and all her friends too. She imagined losing Max and their home, picturing how seeing her in bed with Franklin must have devastated him. Camilla's tears continued as she paid her bill and left the cafe, heading home. There, she found some gin, enough to numb her emotions but not enough to pass out. After drinking it, she hoped it would help her sleep and maybe even bring Max back. The next morning at 11 a.m., Max sat at the bistro waiting for his daughters. He had reviewed and approved the draft of the divorce petition earlier and had used the 2-hour drive from Charlotte to think about what to say. As usual, they exchanged hugs and kisses, talked about school and work, ordered and ate their food, and cleared the plates. Then came the serious conversation. "Dad, we know something's wrong," Joan said. "You look sick. Are you here to tell us you have cancer or something? And if so, where's Mom?" "Yes, I have bad news," Max said. "But it's not about anyone dying." "It's Mom," Jane interrupted. "Did she run off with one of her firm's lawyers? A young, strong guy?" Both girls laughed, momentarily taken aback by the absurdity of the idea, but their father's serious expression quickly sobered them up. "No, it's not that," Max said. "Mom did something terrible, but it doesn't mean she's done anything to hurt you girls directly." "But if she's cheating on you, she's hurting us too," Joan said through tears. "If her actions are destroying our family, then yes, she's hurting us just as much as she's hurting you." The girls cried, and soon, Max was crying too. They all shared their grief, realizing the full impact of what had happened. Max's daughters hugged him tightly, trying to comfort each other at the same time. "Dad, let's get out of here," Jane suggested. "There's a park just a couple of blocks away where we'll have more privacy." People were staring, so Max quickly settled the bill, and they walked to the park, each girl holding onto him as they went. Once they found a bench, Jane spoke up. "Dad, we deserve to hear how bad it is. You know, get the whole story." Joan jumped in. "We're mature enough to handle this. Just tell us what's going on." Max began, "I've been trying to figure out how to explain this to you. I agree, you're both adults now, and you're right, your mother did cheat on us. I found her at home with another man, and she admitted there were others before him. I'm still in shock, but I know our marriage can't recover from this. I've already consulted a divorce lawyer, and she'll be served with divorce papers today." The girls exchanged glances, tears streaming down their faces, then fell silent as they absorbed the news and contemplated their future. Max continued, "No matter how tough things are, you need to focus on your studies. I have enough to cover your senior year at Duke, and if either of you wants to continue with graduate studies, I'll find a way to support that too. But there's a condition." They looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I'm happy to support your education, but I expect you to work hard and maintain good grades." "Yes, but with what Mom did, it's hard to concentrate," Joan said. "But you're adults," Max replied. "Real adults can handle adversity, right?" The girls looked at each other, cried some more, and hugged him. "Yes, Daddy. We won't let you down," Joan reassured him, while Jane looked thoughtful. "Dad, Joan's right. We won't let you down, but what about you? Will you be okay? What are you going to do?" "Well, you have a lot of time to think on a 2-hour drive. First, I want you both to know that I'm not surprised by what you said. I know you'll keep doing well in school, and I'll continue to be proud of you. As for me, what Mom did hit me hard. I could crawl into a hole and wallow in self-pity or try to make peace with her, but that's not who I am. I've spent my whole adult life taking care of others, my grandparents, my sisters, my mom, and you girls. It might sound like I'm complaining, but I'm not. The company will soon be sold, relieving me of responsibility for my sisters. Camilla's left, and I promise I'll be there to help you start your adult lives. So, 2 out of 3 women in my life haven't worked out, but that's not so bad. I'm looking at this as a chance to start fresh, a new life dedicated to taking care of one person, me." "Really, Dad? If you mean it, that's great," Joan said. Jane was more skeptical. "Dad, what does this new life mean? Are you going to work for another pharmaceutical company or buy a farm?" Max smiled. "Good question. I don't have all the details yet, but this new life is going to be active. I'm planning to run marathons, climb mountains, swim across the Atlantic, trek through the Alps, and go on safaris. I have a million things I want to do. And who knows, while I'm at it, I might meet a nice woman who's into the same things. Trust me, I'm going to make the best of this situation." The girls looked at him, astonished. This wasn't just their father, it was someone ready to embrace a whole new life. "Did you come up with all this while driving here from Charlotte?" Jane asked. "Partly, yes. I didn't sleep much, and different ideas kept popping into my head. I could start drinking and feeling sorry for myself, but instead, I'm going to make the most of this mess. Trust me, I'll be fine." With more hugs, kisses, and tears, Max left his daughters and drove back to Charlotte, still in the gold Mercedes. As soon as Max left, the girls called their mother. "Hello?" Camilla answered with a shaky voice. "Mom, this is Joan and Jane. We had breakfast with Dad, and he told us some terrible news." "What did he say?" Camilla's voice trembled. "Well," Jane said, "he mentioned divorce, and the reason was your betrayal. He gave us a few more details, but that's the gist of it." "Is it true?" Camilla asked, her voice breaking. "Yes, it's true," Camilla admitted. "He and I have been married for a long time, and I made a big mistake. Actually, more than one mistake. But I'm sure we can get through this. I just need to give your father some time." Joan cut in. "Dad mentioned divorce. He didn't talk about fixing things. He was clear about cheating." "Well, technically, he's right," Camilla said. "But that doesn't mean we can't fix it. I told him I'd do anything." Jane interrupted, "I think you're delusional. Dad said he's already met with a divorce lawyer. He said there's no turning back now. Joan and I don't want to take sides, but you need to face reality." Camilla's breathing was heavy on the other end of the line. Joan and Jane exchanged worried glances. Should they have gone to Charlotte? Finally, Camilla spoke, barely above a whisper, I know I messed up and ruined everything. I think your father hates me, and he's right. I've done awful things. He told me to hire a lawyer, and he was right about that too. I'm so sorry, girls." "Don't worry about us," Joan said. "Everything will be fine with us. I know Dad is doing everything he can. You need to take care of yourself. Hiring a lawyer sounds like a good idea. Jane and I can come to Charlotte if you need us." "Thank you, girls," Camilla said. "That's very kind. I'll be okay. I just need some time to come to terms with what I've done." They hung up, and the girls were left unsure about what to do. "You know," Jane said, "it's kind of funny, although it's not really funny, that we're more worried about Mom, who caused all this, than about Dad." They talked a bit more and decided to let their parents handle things on their own without their interference. Camilla sat in her Charlotte home, feeling a bit hungover from the gin she drunk the night before and even more depressed after talking to her daughters. She knew she needed to get up, get dressed, and do something. Maybe buy some more gin, she thought, when the doorbell rang. A young woman stood at the door. "Can I help you?" Camilla asked. "Yes, ma'am," the woman said. "Are you Camilla Tronder, Max Tronder's wife?" "Yes, that's me. Why do you ask?" "You've been served," the woman said, handing Camilla a folder with documents and taking some photos. "What?" Camilla asked as the woman walked back to her car. Camilla went inside and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mysterious folder. When she saw the title of the first document, Petition for Divorce, she nearly fainted. She remembered Max's last words, "Get a lawyer." As she looked around the familiar kitchen that had once been filled with happy moments with Max, she knew those days were over. Camilla was right. She and Max didn't reconcile after her betrayal. 6 years later, as she watched Jane dance with her new husband at a lavish hotel ballroom, Camilla thought back to when the girls were teenagers. Life then had seemed overwhelming, Too many activities, too much teenage angst, and too many boys who were either too mean or too nice from Camilla's perspective. Max had been too busy with his job, and the lawyers were too boring. Now, as she sat at the same law firm, doing the same monotonous paperwork, she longed for those days. "Camilla, here's your wine," said Carl, a middle-aged, slightly balding lawyer who had escorted her to Jane's wedding reception. "The bride looks lovely, just like her mother." "Thank you, Carl," Camilla said, taking the wine. "You're sweet." He was a kind man, and while she could imagine marrying him if he were interested, he definitely wasn't Max. Camilla couldn't help but glance across the room at Max, who had just returned from a mountaineering trip to Nepal. To her, he looked like one of those bronze Greek gods.